In this video tutorial, I'm creating what I call Café Chablons, which is a beautiful individual chocolate with a pipe ganache filling. The ganache filling is created with a touch of coffee infusion, which is sandwiched between two discs of chocolate. The discs of chocolate are created with what we call a chablon, and I'll show you how to utilize that within the video. I hope you enjoy it. The first step in this recipe is the ganache to give it time to actually set and crystallize. Place the cream into the saucepan and bring that to a boil. We've boiled the cream. We then add in some roasted coffee beans. Just select your favorite type of coffee. We ensure that we don't boil the coffee beans together with the cream because it releases tannins. Cover the pot. You can only use plastic wrap if you're using induction. If you're using gas, you'll have to use a lid. Infuse that for 20 minutes. We're then going to reweigh the cream back to its original weight of 195 grams. The coffee has been infusing for 20 minutes. Drain the coffee. Because coffee is dry, how much water it absorbs from the cream will vary each time you make it, which is why we reweigh it back to its original weight. So we're going to take it up to 195. Place it back onto the stove, add in the vanilla bean paste, and bring it back to a boil. Now that's come back to a boil, pour it over our milk chocolate. I'm going to whisk that together before changing the whisk to a stick blender. By emulsifying it with a stick blender, it gives us smaller particles of chocolate and water, which is what the ganache is made up of. With the smaller particles, it gives you a smoother and creamier ganache. If you don't have a stick blender, you can use a whisk and it'll still be fine. This just makes it that little bit creamier. Place plastic wrap on the surface so it's touching the ganache. This needs to set at room temperature for approximately 4 to 5 hours so the ganache can firm up enough to pipe. If you've got a cooler room temperature, it may be a shorter period. If you've got a warmer room temperature, it may take a little bit longer. If you want the ganache to set faster, spread it out in a thin layer on a tray and cover it with plastic wrap. For the ganache, we're going to sandwich it between two discs of chocolate. To create those discs, we're using what we call a chablon, which is a stencil, and it's a couple of millimeters in thickness. Once we spread the chocolate through the chablon, we let the chocolate set, then peel the chablon off. So this is going to be our base, and this is going to be the top. I'm using a transfer sheet on the top. You can pick any design. Make sure that you're using the transfer sheet on the side that is slightly textured, and we place a chablon on top of that. So this will be our base. We pipe our ganache on that. Once this is set and contracted, we're going to place this on top of the ganache. I've tempered some dark chocolate. If you need some guidance on tempering, have a look at our library. We have lots of videos on tempering. Make sure your chocolate is not too cold, especially on the chablon that we're using the transfer sheet on. If the chocolate is too cold, it won't have enough heat to melt the cocoa butter on the transfer sheet, because then the print will contract with the chocolate. For that to happen, the chocolate can't be cold. Spread the chocolate so each disc is completely covered. Then, like you would a chocolate mold, I'm going to scrape the surface onto the bench so I can reuse that chocolate. So starting here, just angling the scraper, go across the surface. Now, each time you scrape, you're going to remove more chocolate from the surface. So try to just scrape once and you will overlap a little bit in the middle. Any bits of chocolate that we have here, like this, you need to scrape again to ensure that it's completely clean so that when it contracts, it can contract cleanly. Now, just as the chocolate sets, pull the chablon off. The chocolate won't have contracted enough to be lifted off. With a pack of Chablons, you do get 2, so you can always do a top and a bottom, but you can keep going and repeating the process until you have as many as you need. Now this sheet needs to set and contract because we're looking at the transfer sheet to contract together with the chocolate. You can leave this at room temperature for an hour or so, or you can place it in the fridge for 5 minutes if you need to speed that process up. The chocolate can also stay on the transfer sheet for up to a week, if not more, and only take it off the transfer sheet when you're ready to apply it to your ganache. Scrape up any excess chocolate and you will need to reheat it with a heat gun or a hairdryer. We then apply the chocolate to the base. Spread the chocolate out with a palette knife. Then we scrape it. You'll notice I've got the Chablon on the end of the sheet. So when I scrape the top, the chocolate's going directly onto the bench. Press down firmly across the top. Same thing. Peel the Chablon back before the chocolate fully contracts. It's important when you do the chocolate disc for the base that they don't contract away from the paper. If they contract away from the paper, when you go to pipe on them, they'll move because they're so light and thin. So try to keep them on the paper and don't release them from the paper before you pipe on. The ganache here has set. I'm using a small star nozzle. Turn the top of the piping bag down, place the ganache inside. Pipe the ganache onto each disc. You can pipe it straight up and down. If you're piping it straight up and down in what we call a star technique, you can use a bigger nozzle. With a rosette, make sure it's not too big. You don't want to exceed the edge of the chocolate disc. The bases are all piped. We then take the top and you've got the transfer on top. We place it transfer side up. Here is my finished Café Chablon. These little morsels are going to be very much appreciated. They've got the snap of the chocolate, the creamy ganache center with a touch of coffee. Absolutely beautiful to eat and quite easy to make.